Alright guys, so welcome back to do our last set of notes for Unit 15. So variation is something you've seen in Algebra 1, which means it should technically kind of be a review, but this is why we're doing it, to refresh your memory. So direct variation, if you remember, it's always linear, so it's always a straight line. And the formula was always y equals kx, and k is always going to be just a regular number. Now, if you remember, direct means they go hand in hand. So if your x's are going up, your y's go up. If your x's go down, your y's go down. So like, for example, the amount of hours you study and your test grade. So the more hours you study, the higher your test grade goes up. That's like a direct variation. Okay. So we have one formula, y equals kx. There's another formula that if I said take y equals kx, I'll do it up here, y equals kx, and I said solve for k. We're going to do division, multiply x on both sides, and we end up with k equals y over x. So that's the other formula that we'll see in a little bit for direct variation. It's y over k divided by x, and like we've done in all the units, the denominator can't be 0. So x definitely can't be 0. Right. So direct variation, you're going to think multiplication. Right? Multiplying something by the k. Let's look at our first example. You're going to read it one sentence at a time, and you're going to create it into math terms. So suppose y varies directly with x. Anytime, let's switch markers, anytime you see y varies directly, that automatically translates to y equals k. So y varies directly with x, so y equals kx. That's step 1, setting up what kind of variation equation we need. Sometimes they'll switch the letters, and we'll see that later on. Next, step 2, we're going to keep reading. So suppose y varies directly with x, and we know y is 4 and x is negative 2. So they told us what y and x are, and we're going to plug that in. So step 2 is plug in. Plug in. So always plug in with parentheses. We don't know what k is, but we know x is negative 2. If it helps you, I'm going to go and rewrite this as 4 equals negative 2k. So it looks more like what you've seen in Algebra 1. If not, you can leave it in the first form. It don't matter. So now we're going to solve for k. Divide by negative 2, algebra skills. I'll move my work up here. We get k equals negative 2. So before we had y equals kx. And we know from our notes up here that k has to be a number. We just found that number. So step 3 is going to be to rewrite our first equation, to rewrite step 1 and put in k. So to substitute in. So y equals, instead of k, we're going to do negative 2x. So that was step 3, setting up the new full equation. Then we finish reading, and it says, what is x? So we don't know what x is, when y is 6. So now we are looking for x, given y, and we now have k. So just like step 2, step 4 is going to be to plug in what we know. So we know y is 6. K is negative 2, and we're looking for x. Last step, solve for x. Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, cancel out. We get x equals negative 3. And you're finally done. There's nothing else to read in our sentence, and we found what they wanted for in the end. And that's it. That's number 1. So let's look at problem 1b. Same thing, we're going to take it a sentence at a time, and step 1 is always going to be just write the new equation. So it says the distance a spring stretches varies directly. Alright, so distance, I'm going to use d, and it says varies directly. So d equals k. Varies directly with the amount of weight that is hanging on it. And weight is with a w, so I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to put w. So d is the distance, directly varies, okay, with the weight is w. Next step, we read the next sentence. A weight of 2.5 pounds stretches a spring 18 inches. So now we have the w and the d. We're going to plug it in. So the distance was 18 equals, we don't know what k is, and w is now 2.5. Do some awesome algebra and we get k is about 7.2. So we're going to take that, put it in step 3, rewrite equation, d equals now 7.2 w. Switch colors. It's w. Now I'm going to keep reading, see what they actually want us to do. What is the stretch of the spring when the weight is 6.4? So we don't know what the stretch is, which means we don't know what the distance is. So we don't know what d is, but we know k is 7.2, and we now know w is 6.4 pounds. Once again, we'll do some math, do some algebra, just multiply, and you'll get the distance to be 46.08 inches, because we don't forget units, because we're awesome. Okay. That was all direct variation. And if you remember in Algebra 1, there was another type of variation. It was inverse variation. Inverse is the opposite of direct. So direct was multiplication. Inverse is going to be division. So they're in opposites. So direct, when x went up, y went up. When x went down, y went down. Inverse, they're opposites. So if x's go up, your y's got to go down. If your x's go down, your y's go up. So for example, the faster you go, your speed limit in a car goes up, the gas in your tank goes down. So that's an inverse variation, inverse relationship. So the formula for that is going to be y equals k divided by x. And just like before, x obviously can't be 0. And if we did what we did up top, take the formula, solve for k instead. Let's go ahead and do that on the side. If I take y equals k over x and I'm like, solve for k, in order to get rid of a number in the denominator, we multiply it. So k actually equals x times y. So k equals x times y is our other equation associated with inverse variation. Let's go ahead and jump into a problem. Again, same steps. Read each sentence, set up your equation. Y varies inversely. So y varies directly was y equals k. Y varies inversely is going to be y equals k fraction bar. With x, so we know x is going to be the number on the bottom. Step 2, read the next sentence and plug in. X is 4, y is 12. So we're going to plug in and solve for k. So y is now 12 equals, we don't know what k is, and x is 4. Oops, I forgot my parentheses. No, I didn't. Now if we want to get k by itself, multiply by 4 on both sides. Those cancel out. 4 times 12 is 48. Alright, so now we have our k, and we can rewrite our original equation. Y equals 48 divided by x. Now we can finally solve what they want. What function models the inverse variation? Find y when x is 10. So we don't know what y is. We know 48 is k. And now they just told us the new x is 10. And that's pretty simple because all we have to do is 48 divided by 10. Move the decimal. It's 4.8. Done. Beautiful. Alright. One more page to go. Let's flip it. Alright. So now, without a word problem, we're given a table. And we have to figure out if it's direct or inverse variation. So I'm going to put a little side note on the top. So to do this, we need to find k. Alright? And to find k, there's two ways. If it's direct, we use that second formula we did in the beginning. K equals y divided by x. Because if I flip over, we did all that work already. K equals y over x. if it's going to be an inverse function, to find k, it was you do y times x or x times y. It don't matter. All right? And all our k's have to be the same for it to be either direct or inverse. Let's go ahead and jump into the problem. So I'm going to create another column here to find my k. I'm first going to look at my table. It's 2, 4, 8, 10, 2, 4, 10, 15. Wow. And then the y's are 15, 7.5, 3, and 2. So our x's are getting bigger, but my y's are getting smaller. So this looks like an inverse function. So I'm going to go ahead and check for inverse, which means I'm going to try the formula y times x just to see what happens. So I do 2 times 15, that's 30. 7.5 times 4, that's also 30. 10 times 3, easy, 30. 15 times 2, easy, 30. So all the k's were the same, which is what we wanted, smiley face, which means this table is an inverse variation, inverse relationship. All right? Now let's look at the second one. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to set up my k and see what I can find. Let's do that. Alright, I'm going to again compare. My x's are 2, 4, 10, 15, so they're going up. So my x's go up. And my y's are 10, 8, 3, 1.5. So 10, 8, so it looks like they could be going down. I'm going to try inverse again. So y times x. So 2 times 10 is 20, but 4 times 8 is 32. We need all the k's to be the same, so I don't have to keep going. These are different, which means it's not inverse. Now that doesn't mean it's automatically direct. We still got to check it. So to check direct, you take the y value and divide it with your x value. So we do 10 divided by 2, that's 5. 8 divided by 4, though, is 2. So again, they're different, which means in this case, it's not direct and it's not inverse. So your final answer is neither. So it's neither direct and it's neither inverse, or however the English way goes, I don't know. The tip, though, is always try for inverse because that's the easiest. That's just multiplication. If that doesn't work, then you go ahead and try direct as your last resort. Okay, it's like a short little method to use. There's two other new types of variation. There's joint variation, which I'll tell you the math definition and then we'll break it down. It's one quantity that varies directly with two or more quantities. AKA, that just means instead of y equals kx, you have y equals k times x times another thing, or another thing, and another thing. You just have more than two variables on the right side, but it's multiplication. So joint variation is direct, which is technically purely multiplication. Oops, guys can't see the page. Then there's another one called combined variation. So that math definition is when one quantity varies with respect to two or more quantities. Quantities, I think I spelled that right. AKA, instead of just one multiplication or just division, you've combined them. You have a multiplication and a division inverse in the problem. Right? So this is both multiplication and division, because it's combined, just like the word. Joint means you push them all together, it's multiplication. Combined means you combine multiplication and division. Let's go ahead and apply that to a couple problems. So it says y, I can't read A. So A varies jointly, which means A equals K. And it's jointly, so it's multiplication. with B and C. So with B and C, which means this is a joint variation. Because instead of y equals, or A equals KB, you have K, B, and C. That's two or more quantities, which is joint. Next one, Q varies directly. So Q equals K, direct as multiplication, directly with R, so I write that, and then inversely with S. Remember, inverse was division, so inversely with S, so divided by S. So now look at our equation or look at your writing. It's directly and inversely. We have multiplication on top and division here, which means this is the combination. This is the combined variation because there's both. Third one, T varies directly. So T equals K with U. So it's just T equals KU. This is only direct variation because you just have a K and some other letter. Up here it was K, B, and something else. We had three things versus two. So this is direct. Last one, S varies inversely. So S equals K fraction bar with the square of T. So square of T, it has nothing to do with a square root. The root word is not in there. So square of T means it's T squared. Just a fancy way of saying it. So K over T squared. There's no multiplication, so this is plainly inverse because it's just division involved. Last but not least, it wouldn't be math without a word problem. So fun. Let's go ahead and do one. Same steps as the first page. Read it sentence by sentence and set it up. So the volume of a container, I'm just going to say V, so step 1. The volume of a container varies jointly, so equals K, with the square of its radius, just like the square of T was T squared, square of its radius is R squared, and its height, so times H. Hopefully this formula looks familiar. Flashbacks to geometry. This is actually the volume of a cylinder formula. Cylinder. Or is it dar? I don't know. I think it's the spelling. It's okay. So we have V equals KR squared H. Now we're going to keep reading. And it says the container has a height of 10. So I'm going to write down what I know. H is 10. A radius, so just R. I didn't say radius squared. R equals 6, and a volume, I'm going to go ahead and change it. Let's change the volume to 1,131. 1,131. Trust me, it'll be really cool. That's all they gave us. So now we're going to go ahead and plug in what we know and look for K. So step 2. Volume is 1,131. We don't know what K is. Oops, I should have put that in green. Oh well. R is 6, but we need R squared, so I got to square the 6. And then H equals 10. So now I have 1,131 equals K times 36 times 10. 10 times 36 is 360. Go ahead and divide all that. Let's move it up here for space. We actually end up with K being 3.14 blah 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 blah. Which, cough cough, flashback to geometry again, 3.14 stands for pi. I'm getting really into this now. But 3.14 is pi. So if we put this back in the formula, it's V equals pi R squared H, which is actually the full formula for the cylinder. Now every problem, it's not going to turn out to be 3.14. It just turned out that way because I changed the number. And no, you cannot change the number on your quiz. So now that we have that, step 3 is going to be to plug in the K that we found. So V equals now 3.14 R squared H. And we continue reading. What is the volume? So now we don't know what the volume is. With the container when you have a radius of 4 and a height of 4 as well. So we can go ahead and plug those in. So we have 3.14. R is 4, but we need to square it. and H is 4. The most common mistake we see is people forget to square the R. So please don't. Put a note somewhere on your page if you need to. But once you do all that beautiful multiplication, you should get V equals 200.96 centimeters cubed, because volume is always cubic metric units. And that wraps it up. This finishes our complete Quiz 15 unit. Next video I'll be posting is of the first practice quiz. If you need to make flashcards, go ahead and do it. If you need to go to Khan Academy to study these things, do it. Please don't forget that you need to study for math. It's no longer just, oh, I'll remember it. Okay? Good luck with studying. Have a great day.